start? Yeah. 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 Can start. Yep. There she is.
I'll call the meeting to order. Let's rise and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do the roll call, Ann?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson,
Here.
Commissioner Jennings,
Here.
Commissioner Wadi,
Here.
Chair Kent.
Here. I thought you said my name earlier. Any ex parte communications? Anyone on the board?
No.
None?
No.
None here. Move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar are items considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by approval of the consent calendar. The staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the commission. There are no separate discussions on these items unless the commission member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Anyone from the commission request removal of any?
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to abstain on the minutes because I wasn't at that meeting, and I have no comments or questions about, what is it, 726 Madison.
Anyone from the audience want to pull an item from the agenda? Hearing no, then someone make a motion to pass the agenda items?
Sure. I can move to
Consent calendar.
to approve the consent items, noting that Commissioner Donaldson is abstaining from the minutes.
So should we vote on them separately if you're abstaining?
I don't know, do we need to vote on them separately? I don't think so. I can just say I'll abstain from the minutes. Yeah.
All right, all in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
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 Aye, with an abstention on the minutes. Okay.
Noted. The consent calendar is approved. There still is a 14-day appeal period for planning application 18038, 726 Madison Street. So if you have story poles up, they must remain up for 14 days. Are they up? They should be up, right? Yeah. Moving on to public comment. For persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda, please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission ability to take or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to add to a future agenda. Are there any speaker cards for public comment?
Nothing for public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we will close public comment. Moving on to item 7, discussion and possible action on matters related to the following. First one is 7-1, planning application 18036, design review for a 2-level addition and lower level conversion at 976 Tulare Avenue. Could the planning staff present that?
Yes. Once again, this is planning application 18036, 976 Tulare Avenue. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 5,950 square foot sloped lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,753 square foot house built in 1915. City records show the following work done to the property: termite repair and a re-roof. Here's a street view of the property as it sits today. Project requests. The applicant is seeking design review approval for a 52 square foot addition on the main level, a 308 square foot addition at the lower level, and conversion of 548 square feet of existing lower level into habitable space to accommodate a master suite, family room, laundry room, and storage areas. This will result in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 3,021 square foot home with a maximum height of 23 feet 7 inches. The existing height of the home is proposed to remain, with majority of the project scope occurring in the existing lower level of the home. No story poles were required. Here's an existing front elevation of the home, and here's the proposed elevation at the front. And then here's the existing rear elevation, and this is what's proposed. Exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Exceptional design treatments include preservation of the existing craftsman architecture, painted stucco siding to match, a new tile deck, a new side entry to the proposed lower level, new casement windows, and increased livability with the proposed addition and conversion. Parking, 2 off-street parking spaces are proposed in the side yard, clear from the front setback area. Staff has not received any correspondences in regard to the project proposal. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA. Recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
No, I don't think I have.
I have one. I just was having a hard time figuring out where the 52 square feet on the main level is. Is that just is it a new stairway or what is?
Yes, the 52 square foot addition off the main level is to accommodate the proposed interior staircase to access the lower level, so it's
Okay.
all enclosed.
Okay, thanks.
Will the applicant like to come up and say a few words about the project? Is the applicant here?
Oh.
I don't see
Oh.
him.
We don't see Jason here.
Jason, yeah.
I'm not
You
sure.
thought the consent calendar would last a long time or
We
something.
should have switched in the agenda, but
Uh-huh.
I guess we can move on to any public comment on this item.
No public comments, huh?
Well, if it's for design review, we really should have the client here to,
Yeah.
They need to be present in case you have additional, either technical questions or conditions of approval that you want to have on the project.
so should we just put it on hold and then
I would,
possibly come back?
yeah, in the interest of time, since they're not here, I think we could probably move on to the next agenda
Okay,
item.
let's do
You
that.
know, we might be able to just take a 5-minute recess, and do you know, Jason should come, shouldn't he? I mean,
We've emailed him on Monday, so.
he's been
he
very
knows.
reliable, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Given the attendance we have tonight, I don't want to add, any time delays. So
Yeah.
if you'd prefer, we can move on to the next
Yeah,
agenda
I think we
item.
just put it on hold and move on. I mean, that's all right.
The commission wants, yeah. Okay.
I'll go
I think
reach
that's-
out to Jason.
We don't know how busy, we don't know if it's a minute or 20 minutes away, so.
Okay, okay.
All right, so let's just table that and move on to the next agenda item. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7-2. This is a study session for planning application 18037 Townhouse project at the northwest corner of Portland and Kains Avenue. Christopher, would like to present that project?
Our contract planner is actually going to be doing this presentation, so if we could just hold for a couple minutes while Ann gets her.
Oh, all
I
right.
don't think
She
she
is here.
expected.
She is here. I saw
she's
her.
I saw her.
She's for sure here.
All right.
We're having
30-second
staffing
break.
problems. Did Ann go to get her?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm Jean Iceberg, the contract planner for this item. This is 665 San Pablo Avenue, a pre-application study session for a townhome project.
You calling it 665? Oh, I guess that's the address of the whole lot.
The address that the city has on file is 665 San Pablo for the whole parcel. There may be a different address.
Yeah, if something were to be constructed on site, it would be addressed with a Kains address. But for right now, this is the record that corresponds to our parcel quest database.
Okay, thank you.
So the site is located on the north side of Portland Avenue between San Pablo and Kains. You can see from this view, looking north on Portland, looking into the site, that's existing surface parking for the restaurant. The site is a housing element site, housing opportunity site. In the housing element, I'll talk a little bit more about the realistic capacity that was assumed there, but the entire site, including the restaurant, are included in that housing element opportunity. So the project is a lot line adjustment to reduce 4 parcels to 2. The proposal is for attached townhomes with either 8 or 9 units. This includes 1 below market rate unit for lower income households, 1 garage space per unit, as well as private open space, and the removal of approximately 8 trees, street trees and on-site trees. There's no landscape plan. There's a conceptual landscape plan, but no formal landscape plan as part of this submittal, but that would be provided at the formal submittal. So again, the applicants proposed 2 options. The first option is consistent with all zoning standards, including setbacks, open space, coverage, and height. There are 8 units in this scenario. The notable difference that you'll see is that this scenario has entrances at the ground level. So the rhythm is garage, front entrance on the first floor for 2 of the units, and then another garage. And so this is all outside of the setback. The applicant's preference is this option 2, the 9-unit project. Same townhome concept and the overall design are the same as the 8-unit scenario. And the side setbacks are the same, which is this interior to the existing parking lot and the street side setback on Kains. But the front setback here on Portland and the rear setback are reduced. The key visual difference is the use of front stoops that provide entrances to the second level. And so this 9-unit project is requested under state density bonus law to allow for flexibility in development standards. And this is 2 requests. So one is a waiver to reduce the front setback by 5 feet and the rear setback by 10 feet, and a concession to allow the front stoops to encroach into the street side setback. Notably, at the rear setback here, the project abuts this neighboring parcel, but there's a driveway and a garage, and so there's approximately 30 feet to the closest home. And so this is just a comparison of those design choices in the 8-unit project where you have that rhythm of garage doors and front entrances, and then in the 9-unit project requesting the concession for the front stoops encroachment where you have the front stoops into the second floor. So whether 8 or 9 units, the project's consistent with the zoning ordinance and the general plan land use designation, since waivers and concessions under state density bonus law do not affect how compliance is defined. As mentioned, the entire parcel is identified as a housing opportunity site. The housing element assumed a realistic capacity of 18 units for the entire 25,000 square foot parcel. So on a proportional basis for this 10,000 square foot parcel, an 8 or 9 unit project is consistent with those density assumptions. On the right, you can see an example of what also could be proposed on the site. The applicant built out a 15-unit scenario, which is also consistent with the residential density, but they preferred the townhome concept for the character of the street as opposed to this small apartment building. So I mentioned that the lot line adjustment would reduce the number of parcels from 4 to 2. So the resulting lots would be legally conforming parcels, but this western parcel, so looking at the right diagram, the western parcel would have 2 zoning designations, this 30-foot wide section of R3 and the front half of the parcel as San Pablo does SPC designation. So the city's zoning ordinance stipulates that the regulation of each zone would apply in each location. So for example, on the SPC portion, which typically has 100% lot coverage, a future project could have 100% lot coverage in that western portion, but the back portion could only have 50% coverage consistent with the R3 standards. We received one correspondence today, which you should have received via email. And again, tonight is just a study session, no action being taken, or we're looking for the commission's feedback to the applicant before they provide their formal submittal, and particularly around your perspectives on the 8-unit plan versus the 9-unit plan, and also any comments on the parcel consolidation and this resulting one of the resulting parcels where we have that dual zoning designation. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here to present. Thank you.
Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have one, Gene. You go back to the site plan, and will you show us, or with cursor or trace or anything, where is the existing concrete block wall now on the Kains Avenue side? Sort of.
Maybe, do you want to look at the photo?
No, I don't want a photo, but I want to show the location of it on that site plan that they're showing there with the steps there. So that's what I thought. So that wall is basically on the front.
I believe the wall is on the property line,
On
the
the
one
property line,
on
okay.
Kains.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the,
Does that mean abutting the sidewalk? Is that
It's abutting the
property line?
sidewalk, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
and then on the Portland side, it's let's see, well, it goes around a little bit, and there's a little bit of wall. There is wall there, and then the driveway. So the driveway probably goes to the back of sidewalk. That's probably the property line too, huh? Yeah.
I believe so. We don't
It's a
have
very
a
wide sidewalk there.
survey, but
All
I
right.
believe the
All right.
back of curb.
I just wanted to
here
make
is
sure I
the
had
property line.
understood that right. Good, thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So first off, is this being proposed as a rental project, not condos?
We don't know yet. It would need to be either one of those, since it would be one lot as proposed right now.
Right. Okay, yeah, I think, and maybe we can talk to the applicant about that. I know that the affordability requirements differ depending on whether it's rental or ownership, so I just want to understand a little better how that fits in. So how is Albany doing on our RENA compliance? So I know this was identified as a housing opportunity site, not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious for the current period, how are we doing in terms of producing market rate and below market rate units?
So very slowly. Really, at this point, we've relied on ADU creation to help us in our arenas, and we don't have much in the way of actual income restricted units right now for the reporting period.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I had one other question. Oh, Jean or Ann, would you be able to explain, for the benefit of the commission and folks in the audience, what the difference is between a waiver and a concession under the density bonus law?
Sure. So generally, waivers are for physical standards. So in this case, the setback, and it needs to, so generally physical. Concessions or incentives would be something else, whether it's the size of a BMR unit versus a market rate unit.
Some more flexibility.
Yeah.
In what a concession
or,
is.
the types of finishes or things like that are not those sort of physical setback kind of standards.
And under our read of the density bonus law and the amendments have the amendments that we reviewed been approved by the council, or?
We're going to council on Monday evening.
Okay, so they'll be,
First reading.
presumably, if the council adopts those revisions, those will be in effect by the time this comes before us for approval. So under that ordinance, does this kind of project would qualify for one waiver and one concession? Is that right? Or how
You
does that
actually,
work out?
a project can qualify for an unlimited number of waivers, but in this case, because it's one unit and the percentage is such under state density bonus law, it only qualifies for one concession.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and along the same lines, this is the first one we've had really with the density bonus. Explain to me how this study diagram works. So there's, part of the application was a study that showed 15 units. Is that like an exercise you need to do in order to?
Density bonus.
No,
Well-
No
the
density
study
bonus.
plan for A
Right.
0.4.
The exercise that's helpful for us to understand is actually this 8 versus 9 unit project. So this 8 unit project is what we think of as the base condition. So this 8 unit project, it's 100% consistent with the zoning ordinance. It's the form and design that the applicant is interested in doing, but for the front stoop issue that wouldn't be compliant with the code. And so that we take as our base project. And then in order to get that 9th unit and to add the front stoops, that's when this is the density bonus proposal.
So what purpose does that diagram, why did you go through why did the architect go through the exercise of doing that diagram on A 0.4?
Typically, with density bonus projects, you'd be actually going through that process to understand what the density bonus allowance is. In this case, they actually don't need a density bonus because the site would allow up to 15 units. And that was sort of this scenario of this project that's on the screen now on page, I can pull up the sheet number, but in most cases, you would show the base density project as, okay, we can get 15 units in here, but actually we want to do 21. So on sheet A 0.4,
Yeah.
this would be a more typical density bonus project, where on the left, they've got this 15-unit project that we could make work on the site, but actually with density bonus, we could get up to 21 units by providing X number of units at affordable levels. So this is a little bit unique in that they don't actually need the density bonus, but density bonus law says you don't actually need to take the density bonus in order to get the waivers. So hopefully that.
Yeah, that was always a confusing part of the
Yeah.
ordinance for me. And so I'm still trying to get my head around a little bit. All right. Okay.
I had one other question. Does the city have its own inclusionary zoning ordinance? And if so, at what density level does it get triggered typically?
So I believe it gets triggered at five units. 5 units. And so you have to do, that's how this is consistent with the city's ordinance as well at 8 units. So between 5 and 9 units, I think you end up having to provide 1 unit, and then 10 and above, you would have to provide at least 2.
Got it. So this project isn't really providing any increased affordability than what the city would otherwise require for
No.
this proposal?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions, staff? Should we have the architect present?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isaiah Stackhouse. I'm with Trachtenberg Architects. Here, I'll walk you through the plans and specifically cover some of what's been talked about, some of the questions that have been talked about already. We've got the full team here. There's David Trachtenberg, my partner, and Pablo Espinez and Mr. Lee, who owns the site currently, and Pablo is the project sponsor. And Mr. Lee will continue to own the restaurant site and the restaurant, which is under a long-term lease. Thank you, Jean, for your presentation. You covered much of what we would be talking about with your very thorough presentation. So we'll try to keep it brief, but cover some key aspects that may still be worth talking about here. Jean did a great job of describing the site. The restaurant here, which again has a long-term lease, would remain. Current conditions with a large parking lot that's usually empty, large excess parking area here. Covered that pretty well. Okay, this is first density bonus sheet, and it's perhaps helpful to see these side by side. So the base project is a project that complies with all setbacks, heights, shadow planes. It essentially defines the project volume or the sort of the buildable volume of the site. And here we're showing with the townhouse typology that we can get 8 family-oriented townhouses, which really is a key aspect of what the project sponsor wants to achieve here, is sort of family units that are in keeping with a smaller scale across Kains. But so the base project, by definition, is the buildable envelope. Now, the density bonus with the additional 9th unit, you can think about it this way, that 9th unit has to go somewhere outside of the envelope of the base project. So if you've got 8 townhouses, you could either take that 9th one and put it on top, and you could request a waiver which would physically allow that extra volume to be placed somewhere. But in this case, with a townhouse typology, it makes more sense to put it next to, since townhouses really need that ground access. So typically, with most density bonus projects, you often will see a waiver for extra height for those extra 35% units to be placed on top. But with townhouses, it makes much more sense for that waiver for that 9th unit to physically be built to happen in the setbacks. And since this is just a study session, I think we wanted to show you sort of the context of the options we looked at and the possible options, and try to help you understand why our preferred option is the 9-unit density bonus project. So for instance, the project with the math is eligible for 10 total townhouses, but realistically, since you can't really stack townhouses on top, they would really have to go side by side, and that would result in a project with 0 front yard or rear yard setbacks, which is not a project we're interested in pursuing, and probably not one that you would be delighted to approve either. So we showed that for context because it's something that could be done, but again, it's not what we're proposing. Similarly, this project could be built with very small sort of studio and 1-bedroom units to a much higher density in terms of the number of units. Effectively, the setbacks would end up nearly the same under a density bonus project. The base project, again, would comply with all height and setbacks, and the likely density bonus project would ask for a waiver to physically permit those extra units to be built. But the typology our team felt isn't what's the market demands there, and it's not in keeping as well with the smaller residential fabric across the street. So feel free to ask follow-up questions on the density bonus, but we'll move on. Talked about the existing site plan quite a bit. Again, the restaurant will stay in operation under the same ownership. Their extra parking effectively right at the line of the current spaces. This becomes the new parcel. Here's a proposed site plan. the typical townhouse has, here, we'll go to the ground floor plan, has a garage and either an entry at grade or our preference is a stoop entry. You come halfway up into the unit. And then when you enter, there's a stair that will take you up to the main living level. On the, going back to the ground floor, there is, beyond the garage, there is a bedroom or extra room off of the backyard. We go up to the second floor, bathrooms and bedrooms. And then the third floor, integrated kitchen, living, dining with a large deck with additional open space. So open space is something that's very important to our office and to our clients as well. And so each townhouse will get a large deck that's integral to the living space that we think will be really used, and also backyard space as well. Roof plan, we're considering doing solar on all the south-facing roofs. And here's some blow-up plans. And comparative facades. Again, we think that the facades can work either way, with or without the stoops. So we think it'd be a lovely project either way, though we do have a preference for the stoops and the extra articulation that they offer, and also we feel that the ability to come up half a level into the unit really helps make the jump work to having the living space up on that upper floor. Moving around, rear facade, side facades. Here's a perspective comparing the two options, detail. We'd note that there are actually a lot of stoops out in the front yard currently, including the only immediate neighbor does have a stoop as well. And it's every third or fourth house has steps similar to what's proposed. Here's a view from the parking lot side, that third floor open space. And here is a bird's eye view looking down into the backyards, which we think, could be a great spot for a family. Building sections, and that's it. Let me see if I've covered everything. I guess that concludes our presentation, but our whole team is here for questions and for discussion.
Questions?
Yeah, questions?
Go ahead.
Well, so this is this is our first study session. There's a lot of interesting things going on there, but I also have a lot of comments, and I know it's an initial shot at the design. So looking at it as a design issue, there's lots of exterior comments like the wooden fence. The landscaping is very much monotone. I know you probably haven't developed that, right?
Yeah, it's the plans are very preliminary.
So we'll be
In some ways,
seeing this,
they look
when you
quite
see it
finished.
again, it'll be fleshed out, right? It'll be,
Oh, absolutely.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if no one has any specific questions there.
I do.
Okay, please. shoot.
So what size are the units, and how many bedrooms?
They are 3-bedroom units, and let me see, they are a total of 1,944 square feet each.
Okay. Okay, so good size for a family.
And that includes the garage, actually.
Oh, okay.
So the net is smaller.
Do you have any input, or does anyone from the applicant team have any input on whether this is currently being considered as a rental or for sale project?
The idea for the development is to start as a family place, and then decision if we need to, but the idea is to start the process and to permit it as a multifamily.
Okay. And you may want to come up to the mic, but, well, I'll just give you the comment that if you do intend to sell these as condos in the future, you should really consider processing the condo map right now and don't wait for it.
That is, typically, most of our projects, they're intended to be rentals for at least 10 years, but there is a condo map done at the time of approval.
Okay. So I was curious about the new site configuration, and I'm just wondering if you can talk a little about how the proposed lines were decided on. So it looks like you were probably trying to solve for, creating a nice rectangle for the residential development, but the resulting commercial parcel, and which I guess would, under this plan, have a strip of R3 zoning as well, is a little funky. And so I'm just curious why the decision was made to do it that way, and if it just relates to where you need to provide parking for the restaurant, or what other factors you were looking at.
Yeah, actually, well, is that large enough to see? It doesn't show up well there. But sorry, this is a little light to see, but a lot of it does have to comes down to maintaining zoning compliant parking for the restaurant. So the line is struck right at the front of the existing parking here, and although the parcel looks like it's a bit oddly shaped, when you look at the actual condition, effectively this parcel here is more of their own parking. And so the restaurant will feel like, so the line will carry across here and across here. Perhaps it shows up best here. So there'll be a double loaded parking lot here and a single loaded parking lot here, and no real sense on the ground of that sort of dogleg shape.
Sure.
And then, in speaking to the future developability of that site, we did share with Ann and Jean 4 projects that we've done over the past few years, including one where actually Doug Donaldson was our project planner, our project expediter. That project was at 800 University in Berkeley. And so it is quite common, actually, we did the last projects over the past 5 years, almost a third of them are on split zoned lots. So it's a quite common thing, and Doug could speak too to how it's processed, but effectively each side follows the guidelines for that side. We have a similar shaped with a dogleg parcel in Berkeley that we designed in the last year or two, and we're able to put a great outdoor garden space back there that was off of the lobbies. So we had a lobby on the side, lobby and community rooms, and a parcel shaped very much like that. So we think it's still a very viable project. The conditions on the ground really won't look at all odd, and it's still a developable site. And the restaurant has, how long is the lease left on the restaurant? The restaurant lease. Yeah, 18 more years. Oh, eight more years, and may get renewed as well after that. But.
Okay, yeah, and I was thinking more about the future developability of the site than the current conditions, because I understand it is parking right now, but well,
you know,
I'm curious that strip that would still be R3, is that 25 feet wide or?
It's about 35 feet wide, I believe.
35, okay.
And so it, but
So if
it
in the
allows for
future-
and enables this parking lot to fully function per zoning standards currently. So that's a primary driver. The new townhouses, we're proposing a 15-foot side yard setback there. That could be reduced if needed, but it doesn't gain any more parking over on the, a few feet one way or another doesn't add more parking. And we already have left enough room for the parking spaces and then also a decent-sized landscape strip between, the parking spaces and the new fencing.
So if in the future, someone wanted to process a lot line adjustment or a parcel map to utilize that strip of R3 zoning for residential, is that a compliant site?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it'll be one site that's together.
No, I
Yeah,
understand that. Sorry, I'm trying to talk about I like the idea of preserving the R3 zoning on that site, but I'm trying to think about what happens in the future with it
Yeah.
in a redevelopment scenario.
I mean, I think the scenario that we see, we'd be very excited to work on a project on that site as well.
If I can add to that, I think these kinds of sites which are on split zoning often offer architects a nice opportunity to have a massing which is stepped down towards the smaller scale residential. So they actually end up sort of richer in terms of their architecture and massing, I think, when you have this sort of more complex siting.
So again, the thing that I'm really just trying to understand, the question I'm trying to ask is that site wide enough to be a compliant lot if it were processed as a standalone lot?
So just to be clear, it's one lot with the dog legs.
No.
Okay.
I
But the
totally
width
understand
and-
it's
okay.
one lot on this
Right.
site plan.
But
What
the
I'm
width-
trying to understand is that skinny strip of R3 zoning, if that was a standalone parcel, would it comply with, is that a
No.
compliant lot?
Not if it was a standalone parcel,
Okay,
no, it was
thank
not
you.
wide enough.
Okay, that's all I was trying to ask.
Oh, okay. Sorry for making that more complicated than it had to be.
What is the status of that parking lot, that double-loaded parking lot between Taco Bell and the restaurant? That's not part of this lot, but that's,
Can you?
It is a shared driveway easement,
They have an
Yeah.
easement between the properties.
so the parking is shared and the driveway is shared.
Parking and driveway shared.
It's a reciprocal
An access easement, okay.
Reciprocal access.
between the Taco Bell and the,
And the Vietnamese
No,
restaurant.
it's not. He should respond, yeah.
Hi, my name is Lee. I own 665 San Pablo Avenue back 2005 when Sizzler operation. So when Sizzler, we have 48 parking space together. So the side of the Taco Bell and Sizzler, we have 8 parking space. Taco Bell only have 2, and then we have 6, and then the rest that belong to 665 San Pablo Avenue. So after we do the townhouse, so we still have about 24 parking space together to operation about a Vietnamese restaurant right now. So I think good enough. Before we have 48 parking space, that's too many. That's when I have some idea. Back in 2015, we have a 2 meeting with the city, so everything be okay. The way the look right now, so most the neighbor can take a look at it. Back in the war, that's the ugly street we have in Albany. Look very the bad shape. We will dump a lot of stuff going on, I couldn't take anymore. So after we built the 9 townhouse, so the neighbor will be standard and beautiful, a different thing. So right now, look real ugly behind the wall. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Wadi?
Yeah, I just had a quick question regarding sort of the architectural design objectives for the townhouses right now. They obviously are kind of all the same with just some tonal variation in the exterior. Have you guys looked into it all, differentiating and have them look like their own either individual townhouses or two, groupings and breaking it up in any way? Or is sort of the vision here for it to read really as one development with the same architecture?
I think that's still an open question. Again, we are early in the process. We wanted to, part of it is when you build the model, it looks like it's done. But it's, we really wanted to get here for the study session, sort of get feedback on the larger decisions with the expectation that we would really develop it, continue to develop it, landscape, materials. So love to hear your feedback on that. I think it's an open question. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have a similar question to Elizabeth. I was going to ask you, talk a little bit about how you came up with, what your thought processes were when you came up with that, with the design, sort of like an East Coast kind of townhouse with a front stoop, and like you might see in Greenwich Village or somewhere in Baltimore or something like that. And of course the one-to-one roofs are pretty unique for Albany. So. I'd like to kind of get your thought on how you came up with this and what maybe your models
It
were.
was an evolving process. I think the seeds of the projects, to some extent, come out of a project we did in Albany, completed, 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah.
A 4-unit townhouse project at the corner of Cornell and Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Mr. Lee saw that being built and thought, that could work for his site. Unfortunately, we didn't bring photos of that site, but that is more of a flat roof building.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Here, we thought, one, that one of the things that we've seen lately in townhouse design is living space on the 3rd floor, which can have great views, but also allows the building to be cut back, or step back in massing and additional outdoor space. So the idea of the shaped roof actually came from wanting the living space on the 3rd floor and trying to, rather than ending up with flat 8-foot ceilings, to do something more interesting that could be read on the inside of the space.
Yeah.
Again, I hope it comes across that everyone on our team is really interested in doing a really high-quality project here. These could be built more cheaply with flat roofs. But it also broke down the scale of things, helps to divide units, and then also we did a bit of a, as we often do with projects, a bit of a precedent study, just sort of looking through images that we keep over the years, and saw some Swedish fishing huts that were all together in this form, and also some more contemporary townhouses. Yeah. And in fact, I think that our initial package to share with the planners before we had designed anything had some of those precedents, and we just like the feel of them.
Mm-hmm. Have you, looking at the decks on the 3rd floor, and my initial reaction was that, well, that's the windy side. It's the west-facing side. It's hotter on hot days like today in the afternoon. In the other days, it's the windy side, and it's actually, I've lived in Albany on both sides of the street, and I prefer having a backyard in the east, an open space in the east. And I'm wondering what would happen if you flip that upper story design, or whether it might ruin the visuals of your roof line or not. But perhaps then you'd have that deck sort of looking more into the neighborhood, not being affected by the wind so much, and not being affected by the traffic noise on San Pablo.
It's
just a
definitely
thought.
something we could look at. I mean, I think that the original thought was just getting that afternoon and evening sun. But morning sun's nice too. There's certainly great views to the east as well. It's definitely something we'd be willing to look at.
Yeah.
I think that the plans would work either way.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Well, I think that deserves some thought. Then, that's good. Okay. I don't know. Chris, are we going to have a public
Yeah, this
hearing
is-
here
yes, I
before
think
we
we-
start giving comments, or?
It's going to be a little different because we do want to get public input, but then we also want to have a design dialogue. So it's not like we're going to close the door and then just talk amongst ourselves. I think we'll bring you back up. But let's hear from the public now, if we could. Question?
So,
Yes, we'll
Yes.
just put out a card and.
yeah, so this is now the part in the meeting where we'll have public comment. To do so, and request that everybody fill out a speaker card at the back who wishes to speak, and you'll be given 3 minutes.
Is it okay for someone to speak and then fill out the card on their way out? Okay.
As long as they announce their name for the purposes of our meeting minutes.
Yeah.
Doug, you want to start?
Good evening. I'm Ed Fields. I live on this block of Kains. I want to reiterate the points I made in my letter. I'm sorry to disagree in so many things. A lot line adjustment is a minor shift or rotation of an existing lot line. The resulting change in area of the affected parcels is considered minor by the planning director. That's from our subdivision code. The proposed reconfiguration of the parcels does not preserve the required parking for the existing restaurant. As Mr. Lee explained, there are 29 spaces which are required. The size of the restaurant is not correct in the staff report. When I checked the city's records, it was over 5,900, I think 5,700 square feet. Needs 29 parking spaces, not the 24 that are there. The 8-unit plan is not consistent with the zoning code revised in 2009 because the front yard of a corner lot is no longer defined as the yard adjacent to the shorter street front. To comply with the zoning code, there should be a 15-foot front yard setback on Kains Avenue with a daylight plane, and a stairway can only project 6 feet into the required front yard setback. Density bonus waivers should be considered if it can be shown that they are for development standards, and this is a quote, that will have the effect of physically precluding the construction of a development. That's from Government Code 65915. And our density bonus law that's being considered on Monday should reflect the state law. A couple of the comments that I have about what's already been discussed. What happens if the adjacent parcel owner wants to develop that parcel and there's a very reduced setback from this project? That's to the north. The architect spoke. There's no 9th unit that has to go somewhere. There's no density bonus unit. As Jean explained, this project can have 15 units without asking for a density bonus. They ask for density bonus properly by providing low-income housing and getting concessions and incentives and waivers where it's determined that they should get them. So there's not a 9th bonus unit that has to go anywhere. And then I had a couple of comments about whether the applicant is planning to relocate the high-voltage power line. And also, I've asked this before from the city. I've never gotten a response, but in 1971, when the Sizzler was being developed, there were 2 use permits that I was able to find issued for these parcels. And one came from the city council and one came from this commission. And I'm wondering, because I've not seen them, what restrictions, if any, were imposed by those use permits on these lots, because these parcels, which are in single, or were in single ownership. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Next speaker, would you like to speak?
Please come up.
Oh, sure.
Come on up. Both can speak together. Please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry?
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Dwight.
And I'm
this
Vicky.
Vicky Shen. We live in 711 Kains Avenue, about 2 houses down. And we've been living there about 20 years, so we're very interested in how the neighborhood is. And we actually, when we saw this project, I just want to say that we're very excited to have this come into our neighborhood because like Mr. Lee said, that corner of Kains and Portland is a dumping ground. You know, my wife, she goes there and.
So every month I call the city of Albany because CVS and all the stores from the El Cerrito Plaza, they will bring their cart right there every week. And I would have to call the city and say, look, there's another cart. And then all the dumping that's going on, it's just constant to the point where I stopped calling for a whole year. And now it's again, they're back again. So, you know, go ahead.
And then the graffiti on the wall.
There's constant graffiti on the wall. So now I think it's white wall, and they keep covering the graffiti. And I watch that neighborhood at least every day because I broom in front of my house every day. We're Asians, so that's what we do in our house. So, and people are looking at me like, why is she brooming? And I'm constantly picking up garbage on that street with my gloves because it's just gross. Yeah. So 20 years, when we found out there's actually a townhouse coming in, I mean, I think that's going to be a treat for us because we're tired of looking at that dirty spot. No matter what you do to it, it's not going to get better at all because people just put mattresses.
So anyway, so we're excited enough to come to this meeting and we're hoping there's some, I know I'm not an expert on this, but there's some issues that come up. We're just hoping that somehow this project will come true because we hate to see another 20 years of empty lot.
Garbage and dumping grounds where everybody dumps everything. So thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to step up?
You can bring the speaker card up here. Yeah.
Any other speakers? Yes, one more.
I don't have any other speaker cards.
Okay, that's it. So close public speaking.
No other speakers? Okay.
Bring it back to council, and if we have any questions, we'll bring the architect up again. Comments?
Yeah.
Commissioner Wadi.
Sure, and I actually have one more question to ask, and it's kind of a combo for both staff and the developer here. Was there any or I guess the first question would be, as part of state density bonus law, could they, if they needed to, could they request a reduction to the adjacent parcels parking as part of as a concession to allow this project to be feasible?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So we'll need to find out.
So I was going to say, if that is a feasible option, then my question for the developer would be if there could be any consideration to even, or if there would be any interest in looking at a project that would cover the entire R3 zoned portion with the reduced parking, and that would actually be like a more true sort of density bonus project that would be over, 15 units, include an additional BMR, and actually be sort of a more traditional, and again, what we would think of as a more true density bonus project on this site. I know the parking I born and raised in Albany, and I don't think I ever saw more than 5 cars in that parking lot any time that I've ever gone by it. So anyhow, just question for the property owner if that's even, please, any kind of desirable outcome for the site.
Yeah, thank you for the neighbor. So you did so much thing so they have to tell you what's going on over there. The thing is, he said, I said 24, he said 20, because the straight line right now, add on become 20. But when we go straight line, we make some more parking, because after last adjustment, so we can go straight to the wall, and then we go more parking, become 24. That correctly.
Yeah.
So our neighbor very would like to rebuild it, because most one or two people, they don't like whatever we want to build. But they come up to look every day. The city of Albany, that's a good city, not a chunk city, the way they like. Look at it, very chunk. I feel very embarrassed for Albany to see that. Like the neighbor say, even the walk street, even have place to walk. You dump all kind of things, stuff going on there. You want it beautiful or you want it ugly, up to the neighbor. But we would like make Albany look beautiful. Look, all the street look good, but only that place look very bad shape. Every time I look, it's very hurt on me. That's why I made decision to do it. I hope the city and neighbor let we do it. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Pablo Estebanez. I'm the project manager on the site. Answering your question, we have considered every option. We have considered a big old block with 18 units in there. The parking requirements will make it really tight. The final idea for coming up with this project was to generate units where we will want to live. So it's more about the quality of the product that we're bringing out into the market. Albany is a beautiful town that we want to beautify and make it even better if possible. And we know it's in need of housing, right? So, but we want to do it the right way. We want to bring the right units into the market so we can provide good housing to the community. That was the idea behind this project.
So sort of the idea was that you couldn't get that density with sort of a townhouse architectural concept. Was that
It wouldn't be
primary issue?
It wouldn't be like 1,600 square foot units. It will be like 800 square foot units, which are not for a family.
The apartment project, those were actually only, I believe, 500 square foot units in order to fit that many on the site. We did look at, sorry, I didn't bring a drawing of it because I didn't think it would come up, but I'll try to explain what happens when you try to incorporate. I know it's pretty small, but effectively you end up with an extra 35 feet of depth, which isn't enough depth to build a second row of townhouses. You could have townhouses with extremely deep rear yards, but you wouldn't get more. We did also look, the site's about 100 feet, so you can take 6 of these and rotate them from the street and get 6 here and 6 here. So you could get a total of 12 on the site. It's a little more, but it's not much more, and it's a significantly larger portion of the site and a significant portion of the parking, which is currently in the lease to the restaurant. So to draw the line up here would take a renegotiation of the lease, either some kind of parking reduction. We're not aware of any way, and we've done, I don't know, 10 or 12 density bonus projects throughout the Bay Area, and we're not aware of any way where something from this parcel, a concession from this parcel could be applied to a different parcel. That's sort of the string of reasons why we think this is the best project for the site.
Thank you for that clarification. And sort of with that clarification, kind of thinking through all those different options, I would say, conceptually, I at least am supportive of the 9-unit project with the raised stoops. I think the raised stoops make for a better architectural design. I guess just two things with it being a design session that I would encourage you all to look at is one, whether sort of differentiating the architectural design of the units makes for a better project. You know, I don't have a strong opinion right now, but you know, in Albany, we don't really have a whole lot of large strings of homes that all look kind of cookie cutter. Every house is a little different, and I think there's something kind of unique and special about Albany in that sense. So just at least exploring that that option. If that's not the case, and you kind of go back to this more uniform, I guess my feedback would just be with it being a somewhat contemporary design. To me, the devil's always really in the details on sort of slightly more contemporary architecture, and so sort of the reveal of the windows, the fenestration pattern, maybe taking a look at that, and really making sure these are really high quality, you know, 3-coat stucco, deep reveal, good quality windows, that sort of detailing, that all gets really fleshed out. But I definitely think there's a value of the 9th unit vice the 8-unit project. I think it's a negligible site planning difference, and it gains us a unit. And yeah, I certainly think it's a much higher and better use to that portion of the parking lot there. You know, when the other half of the property, if that ever does come in, you know, I would encourage the property owner to be thinking in a sort of higher density, but I think this is the right type of design for it to be that transition into, you know, the finer grain off of San Pablo. So those are at least were my initial comments on the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I also was curious, you know, what you looked at to put more density on the site, and I think what you're saying makes sense. This, you know, this is the kind of project, the kind of product you want to go for, and that's totally sensible. But in light of that, I like the idea of seeing a 9th unit rather than 8. We haven't been doing a great job, as Ann indicated, in producing new housing units in Albany to meet our RHNA requirements, and I like the idea of at least trying to get one more out of it. I also like the stoops, the stoop design more than the, you know, level entry design. I think, you know, as you probably gathered from some of my questions, I'm not sold on this split zoning parcel idea. I know you can do it, but often, so, you know, in my work, when I come across properties that look like that, it's like, why, you know, there must have been some course of events that caused the property to end up with the lines where they are, but like, couldn't they have just cleaned it up and done it better? Like, that's kind of how I'm looking at this, is thinking about, you know, what is the next owner going to do with this, with the restaurant property? And I'm not talking about right now, but 10, 15 years down the line. If you can't really put housing on that strip that's R3, then, you know, I would prefer to see it just be rezoned. I know that's a significantly, you know, bigger approval in theory, but if it's part of the overall development that we're looking at, I don't know that it's, in practical terms, going to be harder to get approval for that, or at least that's my perspective. So if it's really truly going to be part of a commercial development, then, you know, I would like you to at least look at rezoning it to be part of the commercial parcel. And on the other hand, if there's a way to preserve it for residential use, then I would like to see some kind of lot lines that actually would allow that to happen in the future, to be used for residential. And you know, maybe this is just a matter of explanation and you guys have a vision of how that can work. But I think, that's an important part of it for me, is like, I don't want to leave this funky strip. Yeah.
We would fully expect that new project to be a mixed-use project.
Mm-hmm.
For the residential to absolutely make great use of that. You know, we gave an example where it could
Could you go to the microphone, because nobody can hear you if they're online.
We gave an example of, one little dogleg that where the dogleg portion we didn't build on. But to clarify, we would see the whole parcel as a mixed-use project. The density would be prorated, per side. But we have,
I'll show you, this is a project we completed a couple of years ago. Now, this is a project which spans two zones. So what happens here is that the zone splits here so that there's lesser density available here, so it actually adds interest to the project. But it doesn't in any way impede the future development of the site, in our view.
Okay, I think I understand your point. I think that when you come back the next time, if this is really the configuration that you want, and you want to keep the zoning the way it is, but have the lot lines the way they're shown here, I think it would help me to really justify that and explain it. Because it just doesn't seem like the most, I guess the end result doesn't seem like the most natural kind of resulting parcelization. So I'd just like to ask you to look at that. But other than that, again, I'm really excited to see this project overall. And I think, being able to provide new family housing in that area is fantastic. And I like the density of it. Thanks.
Shawadi?
I'm done.
You done?
What stood out for me when I first opened the packet and looked at the plans was the sort of uniqueness of the design. So I think I want to talk a little bit about the design review. It would be unique for Albany to have this row like that. I think I like it. I think I like it quite a bit. I have a little bit of trouble envisioning it because it would be so different. And so I support Elizabeth's comments about, looking at some variation in that scheme. But maybe the best thing would be to keep the integrity of that consistent design for this block. I like the steep roofs, I think. I definitely prefer the stoop design, and I wouldn't like this design without the stoop design. It reminded me, like I said, of a row of townhomes in Baltimore or in Greenwich Village or somewhere in Washington, D.C. It kind of reminded me of that. Those, of course, would be brownstones or brick. This would be different that way. But it would be unique for Albany, but I think it would be a very attractive project. And I am thinking of those little Swedish homes like that, and they always, as I recall, have very bright color, and that don't know how the colors will come out in here, but that's a possibility. I like the design with the roofs. I like the way it is now with the decks facing San Pablo, but I think for the livability of it, it would be better to have the decks face east, and I'd urge you to look at that. I'd like to see how that looks. We may have parking issues here based on the comments we've received and a little bit of confusion about what is actually appropriate for what the restaurant really requires. I had kind of the same thoughts Elizabeth did about how we could work with that, maybe with a density bonus thing. And my one thought was perhaps the restaurant, if it had to, could become smaller. It's a repurposed Sizzler, and it's a totally different style of restaurant, and it probably is too large. It probably has more. When I've been there, it's never been filled, but that may be one way to reduce the parking demand. The parking requirement is if part of the restaurant were remodeled and made smaller, had fewer tables. So that's just one thought I have, an option there. It may be, however, that the parking is going to be okay, that we can meet the parking requirements. We need to look at that. Ed's comments I'm listening to, and maybe he's right, maybe not. We need to look at that and make sure we're accounting for that. It looks to me like we lose 8 spaces of street parking on Kains. They were parked up when I've been doing site visits, driving by and looking at it today, pretty parked up. I don't know if that'll be a neighborhood impact or not. We don't have comments from the neighbors about the loss of parking, and I thought we might tonight. But that could be an issue, and I look at our parking studies, and it looks like the parking occupancy in that block is in the middle. It's not a red line, not overly saturated. It also looked to me from one of the studies one of the maps in the parking study that people tend to leave their cars there for a long time. So I'm wondering if it isn't a car storage area. For some people it might be, in which case I don't have a problem with taking out those parking spaces. So let's see, what else? I don't really have a problem. I hear Megan's issues about the strange configuration of the R3 there, but I don't think I have a problem with that. I have seen 800 University where we worked with two different zoning districts on one mixed-use project. And the other thought I'd had is that there might be a precedent in Albany out in the Gateview area where when we had new housing built that was way lower density than what the old zoning allowed. And when the general plan amendment time came around, and we adjusted the general plan and then subsequently adjusted the zoning ordinance so that to conform those parcels with what was really on the ground. And so that's another way I would think of dealing with this if the next time we do look at the general plan to say, well, look at this parcel here. Should it be SPC, the entire thing? Or is it okay to leave that R3 sliver in there? So that'd be an option I think we have precedent for here in Albany. What else? I think I like the design. I really do. And I would really like to see 9 more units of housing. I don't have a problem at all with getting the affordable unit in there, and with invoking the waivers and concessions under the density bonus law. And I would definitely support the stoops under that. So, okay.
A couple of comments were made. I think Ed Fields made one about the not being a minor lot line adjustment, but a major one. What's the difference between a minor and a major lot line adjustment? Can anyone flesh that out?
I mean, I can attempt to address that from my perspective, if you
Use
want.
your legal expertise, by all means.
I mean, we'll put that to one side, but I mean, in practice, I don't think there really is. I don't think there's really such a thing as a minor lot line adjustment or a major lot line adjustment. It's really just about the number of parcels you start with and the number of parcels you end up with.
Yeah.
And if you start with a number, or if you end up with a number that is the same or less than the number you started with, it can be a lot line adjustment. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about, we just processed the big lot line adjustment on like 40 acres on the peninsula to move things around. And it really, under the law, there's no, that's not really a category. So as long as they aren't creating more parcels, you don't need to go through a parcel map.
Right. And that's the difference. If they were increasing the number of parcels associated with the property, they would have to pursue a parcel map request.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, so a lot of the comments were made, so I might be repeating some of my comments here, but I think also preferred the stoops. I thought that contributed to the neighborhood potential of kind of more dialogue with the street. And I think I took your comment about adding function to the interior space. That seemed like a good idea. First, going up 3 flights of steps to get to the kitchen seemed like a lot. So I like that idea. The split zoning doesn't bother me. I've worked on a lot of projects with split zoning too, and I see it adds a challenge. But every project these days is complex in some way. There's no simple, That's just another.
I know. I will just, all I want to say on that is, as someone who works with a lot of developers, this is the kind of thing that makes developers crazy.
Yeah,
and maybe that's fine. Maybe that's actually an incentive for other people. So
That might be true. I'm not a developer, so I just see it on the different end.
Understood.
And I wanted to commend Mr. Lee's landscape. When he said that little strip of landscape into the wall, I really truly believe it would be a nice landscape because he does the rest of his landscape around his restaurant so nicely. I often see him out there hand watering everything, so it looks beautiful. And that's my walk home on Kains from Bart to my house. So I walk by there every day. I know exactly the issues, and a lot of those cars are just either camping, people living in them,
Really?
or they're just left there abandoned. It's a combination. And a lot of the trash is not, it's, although I like the idea of the development and I'm supportive of it, I think a lot of that issue could be to disappear if you took away the concrete wall. So the concrete wall is the issue, more so than the parking lot. But I think housing would be preferred, definitely in that space. The reduced setback issue, if that leftover lot was zoned for a higher density, then you would have an issue with the reduced lot line, as was mentioned. You know what I mean? Now the zoning changes to that strip, if the zoning changes to high density, you can go to the 0 lot line in the back, I believe. And that all of a sudden,
No, you'd have to have daylight plane would figure in there. If you're talking about redeveloping the restaurant site, but then I think that's the SPC, so the daylight plane regulations would be
So it still
invoked there.
requires setbacks.
So there probably that would help preserve the light on those ground floor backyards, I think.
But could they could push it to the lot line to the first floor?
Pardon?
Could they build to the lot line, but 1 story on the rear end and still provide?
I don't remember or don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one of my concerns. I mean, I like it the way now where it is R2, because that does require I think it does require a setback from the lot line. So that works with me. I think that's about all my comments. I thought your idea about flipping the view was interesting. My view is of the Berkeley Hills, which my real estate agent told me was, when I bought the house, was of no value at all. I like it a lot. And I'm not so sure. I mean, Albany Hills got a nice view too. So either way, you're missing something and getting something. But that's my comments. So. That is, any further comments? You'd like to say something? Yeah, please.
One more time. So Mr. Ed talked about, because he lived right in the corner there, so he doesn't know a lot like people live in the front. So all them car parked behind the wall there belong to most mechanic guy. I've been there most every single day to do it. When the street cleaning, he come out, got the room and sweep it outside, and then walk by. He parked there forever, never move in the parking lot, in the Kains Street. So, and then second thing, the power line. So Mr. Ed, he doesn't know if we're going to move. With the PG&E, we already have planned everything already.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's just a service line to the restaurant. That's all that is.
Oh, right, because the power line's on the other side of the street.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's just the underground service over to the restaurant. That's
Okay.
all. So that would just get moved over to Portland.
Right.
That's right. I remember that on the last
That's
time.
when we move with the line, because the line underneath of the parking lot. So we contract with the PG&E, so with the engineering. So when we do it, so we move the line with the side in the Portland, come in with the power line. So we be all right, because it cost us about $80,000 to $100,000 to remove it, to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. There are existing mature trees on that street. Be nice if we could save some of them, but that's not. They're kind of they're not the greatest tree for that street. They're kind of heavy and dark, and so it's not a great loss, I don't think. But anyways, I finished my comments. We'll be going on for. Any more comments? Then I guess that concludes any questions from the applicant. Enough information from us? All right, so
Okay.
table this item and And I guess we'll go back to our agenda item earlier.
Yeah, well,
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to bring back agenda item PA 18-036, which is a two-level addition at the lower level conversion for a lower level conversion at 976 Tulare Avenue. And we already did a description of the project. So Jason is talking to. Yeah, could everybody take the conversation out the hall except for Jason? You stay here. Not even listening.
Now we have an architects convention here.
Jason, you're up.
You're up.
so Jason, we did the presentation, so now you're up for the Q&A.
Okay. It's a pretty modest project from a urbanistic point of view. The main floor addition on the back just accommodates the stair to go down. Our sort of forensic analysis of the house showed that there was a stair off the back kitchen door that went west, and then when it got to the back corner of the house, it headed south, and it dropped off at the basement door. And you could see the scar on the wall and all that, and it kind of gave me the idea that that's how we could internalize a connection without taking away anything from that house. That house has got, we didn't submit interior photographs, but that house has all of the stuff intact, never touched.
Wow.
It's got really nice built-ins. It's got coffered ceilings. It's got wainscot paneling on the wall. It's just like the owner and I did not want to sully it. So putting that stair outside the footprint of the building seemed like a logical way to address how do you connect to a downstairs that has never been connected. The back part of the footprint of the existing portion of the house was already excavated to 9.5 feet of ceiling height for about one room's depth from the rear towards the street, and then terraced up. So the middle zone has about a 7.5 foot ceiling. And we're mostly going to keep that unmodified and only excavate what we need to create the building program that they want for downstairs. And then the open wood deck on the back, we would basically kind of transform that, demolish it, and turn it into a waterproof deck over living space with some nice porcelain tile and a nice railing. And then the family room would be situated below that. So it's one of those ones where, if we're going to drop in from the satellite, you're really going to be hard pressed to see what we did, 20 years from now. And I think the space that we've added a lot of space downstairs in a way that's stealthy, unlike, many of our other projects where, we might have an upper story addition that might pop into somebody's view or create a shadow or create some concerns about privacy. This does nothing to change the way the main floor of the house functions. Every single aspect of it stays the same. And we're fixing one thing that we thought was a little weird, and that is that the old front porch is kind of a T shape and has a kind of a re-entrant piece where the front door is very deep in the plan. And we're going to literally take the door set and move it. We're going to take the whole wall and move it out to be just a little bit recessed from the old historic front wall of the house, and then kind of capture that space as an entry hall and put in, some nice built-ins. So that's the project. And we're going to restore the driveway. The previous owner had made a parking space in the first 20 feet or so of the lot, and then he'd terraced the rest. So we're going to completely demolish his terraces. And Richard, who is, Richard lives next door and is Cynthia and Chris's, Cynthia's father. He's been dismantling the brick paving and taking it over to his house to use in his backyard. And one of the first steps during construction would be basically to plow the driveway out back to the way it was when the house was first built, to restore the grade to exactly the grade that's native. And that will solve two problems. One is that it will get rid of the need for sort of retaining against the fence that Richard and Hane have built. And then it will also eliminate a clearance to grade problem at the house. In other words, somebody piled earth up against concrete and stucco, and it's not a great, termite condition. So we're going to kind of solve that problem all at once. And the only other thing is that the house is, it's got 7 trees in the front yard, which is very unusual. And we're going to make some tough decisions about which trees stay and which trees go. But that's not anything we've got settled. So I'm happy to answer questions.
I have a question or a comment. Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have a question. When I was over there looking at it, I saw the garbage cans all in the front driveway. And so the thought I had was there probably are some spaces near the electrical box or when you redo that driveway to put an enclosure for the various garbage cans that would not be so visible from the street.
I did forget to mention one thing. Since the time that we did the application, and if you did have a chance to go down the driveway and look in the backyard, we basically took the jungle in the backyard and recovered the yard. There's a pond in the back, there's a level change, there's some walls, and so we're going to do a similar kind of thing on the front. I'm going to widen the driveway to make for a walkway adjacent to the car that will handle the swing of doors, and then that little area that you're talking about near where the gas meter and the electric meter are is a natural place for a trash enclosure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely, and we just simply haven't. Cynthia and Chris don't live here right now. They purchased this house. And Cynthia grew up next door, so this is a special homecoming. But we simply haven't had time to work on that front yard. But I very much want to change the front yard in terms of like the entry walk. It needs help anyway. It's moved. The tree roots and things have made it move. The 2 little wing wall stucco pilasters that flank the stair leading up to the house, they've settled differentially. We're going to have to rebuild them. But Cynthia and Chris are very committed to keeping the house the way it is. In terms of like the way it looks and all of the detailing, and so we're gonna like salvage some of those pieces and either make sort of perfect templates of them or actually reuse them. And I'd like to do something similar so that when you walk parallel to the front of the house to go to the driveway, that there's a more level walk with stairs rather than a tippy in 2-direction path. Ramps are hard to walk on. Steep ramps are hard to walk on. It's much better to walk on a 1/4 of an inch per foot slope, and then to have a stair, take you to the driveway. And there's plenty of opportunity for handicap accessibility in from the street because we can have a level walkway with the sidewalk. And right now there is not. Right now there's an awkward step up because the big Don Redwood has lifted up the entry walk so that it literally now has a step to the sidewalk, and it's a trip hazard. It's a single step. It's awful. So we are going to work on that whole piece as part of that, and we'll show that on the permit plans. We'll develop it before construction. We're reusing the little arbor that's sort of halfway down the driveway. We're going to move it so that it's right at the end of Richard's garage, so that it kind of creates a precinct, and that's I think we show it that way on the plan. Although I think we don't show it exactly even with Richard's, but when we looked at it again, we realized that it would be better for it to align with the rear wall of Richard's garage. That it's a better position for it, and still leaves plenty of room for the tandem parking, and we've got a decent amount of width there, so the car door issue isn't so bad.
Okay.
So you're not really asking for a variance here. You just design.
No, it's all complying.
Well, yeah,
I think we're at the max on FAR.
Yep, pretty close.
But we're doing it, like I said, in a very stealthy way.
50%, yeah.
Right, the landscape plan, I'll just respond to that. There's nothing on it, so I respond to it. I think that was the landscape, right? What was that? Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't submit a landscape plan.
Right. With no landscape, that's right. Yeah, I don't really have, I think your solution looks perfectly logical. And I like all your comments and what you plan on doing at the front. I know it's are you going to keep through Don Redwood, or are you just going to work the sidewalk around there?
It's to be determined. There's a sort of a split verdict on that, and I really don't know how that's going to work
With the
out.
beautiful trees planted in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it's a very interesting tree. It really is. And that type of tree isn't one that I care for in a front yard, sort of front and center. We did, as a intermediate sort of, let's see if we could live with it, we bucked the low limbs that were coming down and hitting the pedestrians.
Right.
So we got them out of that, so there's not
saw that. I
there's not
noticed
a
that, yeah.
collision. And that may grow on Chris and Cynthia, to having done that. So that was it was a step to keeping it. And I know that the neighbor across the street had expressed, some concern about it having the connection to the former owner. And these families, have lived with Richard, who lived in the house that we're remodeling, who planted that tree, or his family planted that tree. So they know this family for a long time.
Can I tell you folks a story of the trees? Somebody from
You want to come up?
You have to come up.
You want to come up?
Yeah.
You come up.
No, you have to come up, yeah.
He's telling me this story from what I heard people in Albany. Apparently, a professor of botany or something at Cal went to China, got the Dawn redwood seeds, and passed it around to people in Albany. And a friend of mine told me that 3 residents have already chopped their tree down because it's not appropriate in their front yards or backyards or whatever. And so we're not the only ones, or my daughter was aren't the only ones that are threatening to cut down the tree. Because it's not appropriate in a city front steps.
It's literally lifted up.
Right. It really is. And we like the tree too. We like the tree too, but we were afraid that.
They tried to flesh out that a little bit. They thought the tree was extinct. And then
That's
they
right.
discovered it in China, in Hubei province. And that it was China,
Isn't that the true
the
story?
Chinese knew it wasn't extinct, but over here we thought it was extinct. And so they brought back specimens. If that's a seed from the original specimen, that
Yeah,
is a
and
very
that's
valuable tree.
We also feel. And one time a man
historical.
was going around the neighborhood taking pictures of all the dawn redwood trees. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm taking pictures of all the neighborhood dawn redwoods. And apparently this guy just passed out the seeds. And also, I'm sorry about the garbage cans. We found it so convenient to our garbage cans. Double the garbage can. Sorry about that. They won't have it. She won't let us do that.
No, my point still stands, though. It'd be nice,
cleaning out
in
the
a beautiful home like that, you really want to have a place to store
Yeah,
the
no,
garbage
I agree
cans.
with you. I agree with
And
you. It
with
will change.
recycling now, everybody has this problem. Where do we put these
My
extra
daughter will
garbage
not
cans?
allow
Yeah,
us to
yeah.
put garbage cans
Yeah.
in front of her house.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to tell you that story. Okay.
Like I said, there's like 7 trees in that front yard. There was also a pretty big trumpet vine that was completely encasing the house. You literally could not see this house. When Cynthia contacted me, I had worked diagonally across the street on a house in Berkeley at 969. So literally diagonally across the street. So I was very familiar with the street. I couldn't place the house. I had no image of the house. 7 trees and a trumpet vine completely covering the porch. The trumpet vine just decided to let's cut it out and let's just see if we could start over, because it had just gotten super woody. It was covering everything. It was like a haunted house almost, and it completely transformed the front porch.
It did.
Seeing it and also being in it. And then there's a tree to the left of the entry walk that is a very unusual shape. It's almost kind of looks like it might have gotten like espaliered, and you can see it in this picture here. And it's got a post to hold up a branch.
Yeah.
That's the tree I'm not a fan of. That's the tree that I want to see
It
go.
seemed like you might start by taking that one out.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the birches. One of them looks more cancerous than the other. There's a couple birches to the left.
Yeah, I would leave the Dawn Redwood to the last.
Yes,
'cause
that was my take too. I'm just the architect, but that was my take, and my strategy was let's buck the limbs and see if that improves our attitude about that tree. I share this general bent that I love redwoods in Northern California.
Right.
I love redwoods in my regional open space. I don't like redwoods on 5,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot lots.
It's not the same red, it's different. It's
But
deciduous.
this is special. But
It's
this
much
is special.
smaller than our redwood. It's not
Yeah.
a huge tree.
This is special. The color of it is super interesting. That silver green. I mean, it's an interesting tree. So the verdict is not issued yet by any means. And I'm taking that advice because I'm giving that advice too about let's try removing some of those other trees first, the ones on the left, the ones to the south.
You should core it and find out how old it is. And maybe it is one of the original seed plantings from the 1956 expedition.
Sure it is. Well, why wouldn't it be?
Well, it looks a little undersized.
Historic.
Oh,
Oh, well.
yeah.
Tall
Vote
tale.
on that.
Well, maybe the seeds were sitting in a pack, open when ready.
All right. Any more comments?
I don't have any comments. I think it's modest. It seems very elegant, and
It's a nice house.
it looks like a nice house
Didn't wanna
and a
mess it
nice
up.
addition. So
Yeah. No, when your FAR goes above .45, we're supposed to look at excellent design, And I looked at this house and I said, wow, this is excellent design. I mean, you really, and in spite of the landscaping, and Chris usually looks closely at that, but I think you're going to do a good job on that. So it's really and I would love to be inside it and see what it's like inside. If from what you say, it's pretty much original, it must be spectacular.
It's really pretty nice.
Yeah.
It
must be.
It's got inlays on the
great.
floors. It's got built-ins in the dining room that kind of work around the windows. The kitchen is original, and we are going to remodel the kitchen, but we're going to kind of do it in an old crafty way. It's not going to be this big old contemporary kitchen, and the kitchen is not going to be any bigger than it is. That was part of the whole, this is what it is, and we're not going to blast out walls and change the way the house feels.
Right.
This is a little bit more, I'm not going to say preservation / restoration, but it's closer to that than what we are normally asked to do.
Yeah. That's good.
Great.
All right.
Yes,
Anything more?
I mean, the only comment I would have is I think this is a great project, and it's really exciting to see like a craftsman get a solid remodel that'll, let it live for several more generations to come and kind of give it that fresh start rather than sort of, stripping off details and doing something different. So anyhow, I'm really supportive of this, and I think it's a great project.
See, we had our public hearing. You opened it?
Oh, I didn't
close it?
do that at all. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
Yes, could we hear from
call
any
this
members of the
architect.
public
Thank you.
who'd like to speak?
No speaker cards for this item.
No speaker.
All right, and we'll bring it back to the commission.
Okay.
And then everybody's pretty much made their comments. My only final comment is I think the best thing you can do for the building is make it more visible, and I think you're working on that, so.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm happy to move. Okay, I'll move approval of planning application 18036, design for a two-level addition and lower-level conversion at 976 Tulare, as proposed by per the staff report.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is passed.
Okay.
So 14-day
Appeal period.
appeal period, thank you, I was going to say approval period, but the appeal period, so leave the story polls up. Back to the end of any new business.
So I don't have any new business, but I do have a speaker card that I think was more intended for the
Public comment?
public comment. So I don't know if you want to
Sure, I
open
think we
public
can
comment?
open for public comments. We didn't get any comments earlier.
Oh, thank you very much. Good evening, council. Thank you. So I'd like to start out today that in the last minutes of the meeting from May 23rd, number 6, public comment, says here, Jeremiah supported the implementation of school zones. And I just want to re-suggest that as a positive suggestion, not a complaint. I know usually we have complaint boxes everywhere. I think they should all be labeled positive suggestion boxes, because if your positive suggestions are labeled as a complaint, nobody wants to hear complaints. So just as simple as labeling the box differently. So I applied last month for the emergency crossing guard relief, because there's really only 5 out of 6 crossing guards right now. And at the city council meeting, it sounds like we have 6, but we don't. We only have 5. We're missing one at Solano and Jackson. And the reason why I applied for this position is because wouldn't that be awful if nobody showed, any leadership or got a security card there to replace this person, and I got an email from Human Resources saying we'll get back to you in a couple weeks. And I sent a reply back saying, are you joking? In a couple weeks, school will be over. It'll be too late. And I'm fully qualified for the position. I'm security for the Port of Oakland. I control traffic on Embarcadero for the city, on the sidewalk, when there's cruise ships. And there's too much bureaucracy and red tape, and nobody's taking action in the moment. And I'm trying to show some leadership and take action in the moment. And it just seems like if a kid were to get ran over there and they're supposed to be a crossing guard, it'd be bad faith on whomever or safety negligence, and these are our kids. I suggest that school zones could be on a future agenda item or a consent calendar or added to the municipal code book, since we're going to revise it anyway. We could apply for the state school zone grant. Jerry Brown says that if we simply get the word school zones in our municipal code book somewhere, the state can legally, technically give us the state grant, which is 10 paid crossing guards and $100,000 to put up new signs and repaint them. Or we can also do something for free at the AAA. They have a crossing guard program and it's free, and they supply safety vests and stop signs for anybody who wants to volunteer to be a crossing guard. I know Albany only has paid crossing guards, but I also wanted to volunteer to go down there. But I don't want to go around everybody. I want to go through proper chain of command. I don't want to get in trouble for volunteering or taking action in the moment. It's a tough decision because I didn't, and someone would have got hit, I would have felt really bad. I think with school zones or any time, we should have more police traffic patrol around schools during at least the drop-off times and loading times to control parents driving fast, quickly to drop their kids off from school, or high school students running late to school in the morning and driving quickly to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. I just want to make just a quick announcement also for your information. So traffic and safety is taking up the issue of school zones Thursday, the 24th. So that meeting's here at 7 o'clock. That will be agendized, and we'll have the agenda out next week online on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
I guess, and Jeremiah? Is that right? Do I have you right? Is that right? You're Jeremiah?
Yes.
Yeah, and you're probably at the wrong place. Even though we're planning and zoning, I guess there's school zones, and then there's the kind of zoning we do, and they're different.
It's a zone within in the city. Right now, we have the state school zone, which is 1,000 feet within as drugs and no drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Everybody knows there's no drugs or alcohol within 1,000 feet. It's a school zone, and it's also a school zone. So when you do some measurements around the school and make a school zone to where the school zone actually is, but at least just a simple word school zones would be great. Thank you for taking up the issue. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm.
With that,
Thanks.
The next meeting is June 27th, 2018, of course.
So let me clarify that. So the traffic and safety is the day after commission, so it would be Thursday, June 28th.
Thursday, June 28th, not the 24th. Okay. Thursday, June 28th, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So I'll adjourn today's meeting.
All right.
We're adjourned? Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.